get this road. Welcome. Happy Thursday, August 3rd. We are here for Prasada Talks Creativity, your most valuable skill. And I am Meg Townsend. I'm a whole being guide with Prasada. And I'm joined today by, I don't know, when I think of creativity, Francine, you're one of like the top 5 people that come into my brain. Who I know who could talk about creativity forever and are just actively practicing it in your everyday life. So tell us just a little bit about you and one way that you brought some creativity into your day so far.
Okay, so hi everybody. Hi Meg. So I'm Francine Bonjour Carter. I live just outside of Philadelphia and I am a creative explorer in many ways. So I am trained as a somatic awareness teacher, which is for me a very creative way to be who I am in and through my body and in and through the exploration of movement awareness. And I'm also a mixed media artist and a writer, and I do workshops and retreats and all kinds of things to help others express who they are in different ways. And to me, that's kind of what creativity is. And let's see, the way I've been creative today, I put together a picture for a workshop in a beautiful way because I knew somebody who was on the picture was very not comfortable with being on the picture. So I wanted to be creative around the way I presented this image to make the person comfortable and also to render the beauty of that person to the public. So that was my creative way of starting the day, actually.
Love that. I love that. So tell us, usually we like to, when we unpack, so it's a new month, so create is our theme that we're exploring this month in our Prasada Talks, in our programming, in our newsletters. And let's just start with just defining that, like what is creativity to mind when you...
Yeah, so I think a lot of people get a little misled or mistaken by associating creativity with being an official artist, right? Like, are you creative? Oh no, I don't paint, or I don't write, or I don't draw. But that's not, to me, that's really not what creativity is. Creativity, the way I will define it, is a way to express yourself that feels generative, expansive, and joyful too, that really brings you some positive feelings and helps you express more of who you are. It doesn't have to be done through a very specific skill set that has something to do with art, right? You can be creative in your cooking. Like, cooking is a great outlet for creativity, whether it's in the technique, in what you make, or in the presentation, or in what you associate together and what you pay attention to when you do it. I think there's a lot of attention and intention in creativity. And if you approach whatever you do with that type of presence, I think creativity flows almost naturally, right? And it's too bad to try to narrow it to specific things, and maybe it's cultural, maybe it's the time we live in, I don't know. But it's too bad to close the door, because creativity is a door opening process to me. That's really what it is. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Makes total sense. And I was thinking about, as you were speaking of, yes, so many people have this association of like, if I'm not in the arts, I'm not creative. But then they perpetuate that story by saying that, like my mother did. She was like, oh, I'm not crafty, I'm not creative. And so certain things she kind of like wouldn't ever open up to. Maybe she just didn't want to, and that was her excuse. I don't know. But then in certain ways, like her cooking, she was so creative, and I actually found out that she and my dad had this group of friends when they were young parents, and they would have like Saturday suppers, and they would, find different themes that they'd want and create menus, and they saved all the menus in this book. And I'm like, that's an example of creativity just really coming alive in a certain area. So if you had if you were working with a client or a friend who you noticed had that sort of tail in their head, and they were telling themselves, hey, I'm not creative, how would you support them in letting that go or shifting that? Because I feel like when we perpetuate that, it creates like a wall, it creates a block.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the closing of the door, right?
Yeah.
So what I would engage in a conversation to learn what that person likes to do. And again, it doesn't have to be grandiose things, right? Do you enjoy dressing up in the morning? Do you enjoy looking at your clothes and picking up what you're gonna wear? Do you enjoy nature? Do you enjoy sitting and drinking your coffee? Like, it can be anything. And from there, from that place, I would look at, okay, so give me 3 different ways you can do it. You can drink your coffee on your couch, you can drink your coffee listening to music, you can drink your coffee outside, so that's already thinking creatively, right? Which is really what we want to do, I think, to have a more expansive and meaningful life. And so it's, what is it that you're already doing and that you like? That's something that gives you some satisfaction, pleasure, and joy. And can you do it in more than one way? 3 is always the magic number. 3 ways is always good. And I think also creativity is getting outside of what is familiar, right? And very often you will find throughout history that amazing inventions were created because of a challenging life situation, right? Something difficult, something challenging, something where the familiar comfort was taken away. And we had to think out of the box. And that's where creativity really flourishes, right? It's when you take the familiar and you start having a different perspective or imagining something different, and then how can I put it together? So I would start with somebody who would really have that old narrow story of, I'm not creative, I'm not good at arts, I'm not good at creative stuff. I would really start with something they are already doing, they like to do, and expand that in different ways you can do it, and then see, because it's like the door that opens another door that opens another door, and creativity is like that, and it's endless. So once you get into that process, something else will happen. And I remember when I was a child, I loved to do this, or I always wanted to learn that, and then it just opens and opens. So that's how I would start. Yeah.
I like that metaphor of the doors opening too. And it really, like, creativity, I mean, and also one of its kind of most potent definitions, it's growth, right?
Yeah.
It's creation, it's expansion.
That's right. It's birth. It's giving birth to something that did not exist before. And it did not exist. And there's a quote, but I never remember exact quotes, and I never remember people's names. But there's a quote that says creativity is doing something. It's not doing something that has never been done, but it's doing it in a way that you're the only one who see it done that way. And to me, that's where our self-expression comes into the picture, right? And to be creative is to put your own vision, your own individuality, your own gift as gift of being who you are, not gift like I'm not gifted or I'm gifted. Again, if we come to what a lot of us think about being an artist or not, or creative or not. But the gift being who you are, nobody else is who you are. That's your gift, right? It's very unique. And creativity is being able to channel that into anything, right? Something you make, or something you cook, or the way you dress, or how you show up in your life.
And that, tell me more of your thoughts of just the how you show up in your life seems a good bridge into, okay, so maybe I don't like to cook. I do, but I'm imaginary person. I don't like to cook. I don't feel creative, but I feel this sort of desire to explore that in my work life in some way. Like, because a lot of these, a lot of articles these days and thought leaders in the business world are saying like creativity is, and this is the title of this talks, like our most valuable skill in all aspects of life in the business world and as we kind of evolve and expand. So yeah, how might that look like in sort of the 9 to 5 experience, depending on, there's jobs that have more creativity inherently, and then there's jobs that might not, but it still is a skill that helps us to problem solve, to look at things in different ways.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, there's actually a lot of research on problem solving and non-linear thinking or divergent thinking, which can be applied to, again, anything. And when you are at work, I see it on two levels: on your like personal level and your environment, being more creative in like the way you arrange your desk, for example, or the way what you have around you in your physical environment while you're working. You can really be creative, and starting by changing what is familiar, right? And maybe bringing some new things in your environment, switching things around. So that is a creative perspective that anyone can start anytime. The other thing will be like your participation in your work is more creative. And again, if you think of monotony and familiarity as the bareness for creativity, it's the soil that has no nourishment for creativity, then you will want to get out of what is familiar and monotonous, right? So you will want to start maybe reading things that are different than what you read about your line of work, or about something that would inspire a work project, or talk to people. I think that's the best way to become creative, is to hear others and kind of pick up on what they say and let it spark new ideas in you, right? And I think it is actually dangerous for creativity to be only surrounded by people who think like us, right? Or who have the same, in French, we will say the same parcours, like the same path, right? Who have done the same studies at the same places and end up in the same place than us. And if we talk to somebody who comes from a different culture, who comes from a totally different angle, that can really help us think differently. Even if we talk about the same topic, we'll have more creative thinking and non-linear thinking about whatever we work on or with, right?
I like that idea. And I know you are a big supporter and nourisher of storytelling and
that's right.
Connection of people. So I like that as just an idea of bringing into the workplace, especially when it's, a team working on a project. It's how can we, make the space for, before we launch or even get into the nitty gritty, like the space for just people to share some thoughts. And
or even bringing somebody external to the team, right? And not like I'm not talking about like an expert on the topic, but somebody who, it's like in marketing, when you have an idea of a project, you want to talk to somebody who knows nothing about it. So it helps you get more clear about what you're doing. And that's kind of the same idea. Inviting somebody who will see your project from a totally different perspective will spark some new idea that you will know how to apply because that's your line of work, right? So that's kind of that type of connection, collaboration, yeah. Because it's all about our imagination, right? And our imagination is such an asset. I mean, we are the only, as far as we know, maybe we're not sure, but we have an amazing imagination. We can imagine anything, right? We can imagine anything that we have never seen, which is quite a skill. And so the use of our imagination and to entertain our imagination on a daily or weekly basis through storytelling or like intentional imagining or a kind of meditation state about, being imaginative and letting images and sound and whatever stimulate your sensory system come to you in a time where you kind of let yourself disconnect from all the busy life and stress and anxiety and just let your imagination take over. And that is really precious to become more creative. It's a practice too.
Tell me more about that. Like what I heard you say just a bit ago, like nourishing creativity. And then you just said it's a practice. So what are practices and what are ways that we can really nourish this or build this creative? I like the word nourish creativity more so than like build the muscle of creativity. I think, but that might be a good metaphor that makes sense to listeners. So I want to say that even though
process,
the resonation for me is more like the nourishing that. So what would be a couple different ideas that you might give us, knowing that there's different people and learners and interests that might come across this talk? What are some different access points to nourishing creativity?
So let's see. I think if you are able to do nothing, because some people cannot do nothing, right? To have like a 10 minutes of doing nothing practice. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's twice a week or once a day, whatever works for you. Is really this is attached to something called non-sleep deep rest, which engages your non-linear thinking and this kind of state where your imagination can take over. So you can sit down and anywhere, inside, outside, and you don't bring a book, you don't bring your phone, you really want to do nothing, and you observe your environment and you're just there. It's also very good, to be grounded and to be more calm. But again, for some people, it is actually not a good solution. So that will be something that works for some people, to have a doing nothing practice for only 10 minutes. For other people, I would say there's what works better will be something active, where you are engaged in doing something. So when I was talking earlier about rearranging your desk, for example, that for some people is the way to get more creative. You could rearrange your desk every week or every month, right? Or a piece of your home anywhere you want. And I think for practice to be easy to put in place in our life, we have to do something easy and small, right? So I'm not talking about remodeling your whole house. I'm talking about a tiny corner where you have just a few objects and you just put it together in a different way, right? It's simple, practical, and it helps you do something, right? Some people get more creative and actually more imaginative when they move, right? When they do something with their hands and their body. any type of practice that has to do with movement, I think really brings creativity. Whatever it is that, you know, you like to do. And what I would invite people is, after whatever practice or class you take, have 15 minutes to maybe write down all the thoughts you have, all the imaginative things that come up to your mind, or the desires or the dreams you have, like, oh, I feel like this now in my body, or we explored this movement, or we danced on this music, and that makes me think of, and then you write it down, right? Or I would love to have, I don't know, maybe you see yourself in a specific place somewhere in the world, and it doesn't have to be realistic, right? Again, we're talking about creativity and imagination and getting outside of what is familiar. So these are a few things that people might engage into and develop a creative thinking, a creative presence, I would say.
I love that. And is that different from, because one thought I was thinking, just in my experience, has been like, in the more sort of familiar creative initial definition of, you know, art and music and stuff. So for me, going to the Barns in Philadelphia, like, inspired a lot of, but is there a difference between, because it more so inspired me. It inspired me to start to create, but I think the inspiration was more. Is there a difference between inspiration and creativity to you?
I think inspiration is one of the food that nourishes creativity, right? That's more it's not the end, right? And it's not a practice. Inspiration is not a practice, but it will help you get into an act of creativity, whether it's an act of thinking creatively or making something, right? And I love the Barns, and that's a great example, actually, because what is unique about that art museum, the Barns Museum in Philadelphia, is that it's a different display from any other art museum that you will see. So again, because it's not familiar, because it's different, you're like, wow. And then that helps you think about, how can I love this, it looks so awesome, how can I bring some of that into my life, right? Like when I go there, I want to rearrange every room in my house afterward. And that's what inspiration is. Inspiration is the fuel. And from a neurological perspective, we learn through comparison and through making differences. That's how our brain learns. So that's why when you go somewhere and it's a familiar environment in the sense that it's safe, you know, it's an art museum, you know where you're going, right? It's not gonna be totally unknown. But the way they do art museum is so different than what you've seen before, that your brain is taking in this information, comparing, and all these activities going on and all this connection in yourself, and you're like, wow, like that really wakes you up. So you are present to your environment and to yourself, because we are embodied beings, so our experiences go through our body in a different way. And that is creativity to me. That's a great example.
Yeah, I love the Barns. And actually my two favorite things might not be the art. I mean, the art in it, of course, is stunning, but it's actually the way they incorporate nature. They've got like a little water reflective pool outside with gorgeous rocks. And then my favorite spot is like right inside, there's that cutout square with sometimes I think they're ginkgo trees or some sort of tree inside, and there's a little bench. So you get this like beam of light, trees, and a wooden bench just to kind of look at it. And it's in the center of the building. It's just
it's just really something. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. And it is bringing different things that already exist somewhere else, but you bring them together in a way that is very unique. Right? It's of course, when we say it like that, it seems very simple, but that takes a real creative genius, like the vision of one person who can see that who can see, oh, this ginkgo tree, this building, these paintings. And I would bet, knowing also that people will come here to see art, and I'm gonna give them something else too. And I think that is in part of the equation, right?
So we only have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to, one thing that we had talked about just briefly as we were sort of preparing some notes for this was, I have written down 5 minutes of handwriting. And I want you to, this was another practice that you had talked about that was a really interesting entry point. So can you tell us just a little more about that? If somebody's like, okay, I'm inspired. I love that you said the food or the fuel for creativity. Thank you for that. So if this has inspired someone to start to look at, and I know writing is such a big aspect of your personal practice and what your gift to the world as well through your creative offerings, one of many of the facets of your creative offerings. But tell us a little bit more about this maybe accessible 5 minutes of handwriting practice.
Yeah. So most of us have hands, most of us can write. So to me, handwriting versus typing on a phone or a computer really opens the doors of creativity in a different way. And there's something so organic and so inherent to the way our brain works with, you know, the motor, like the act of writing with your body and the movement. So again, it's your body, movement, your presence, and how to translate what's going on in your imagination better than writing it with your hand. So 5 minutes of writing practice every day can really help you be more creative and at the same time be more grounded, because I don't see being grounded and being in touch with your imagination as opposite things, but complementary actually. So if you are a morning person, I would say, I will invite you to come in the morning, have your pen and paper, and write about the day that is to come. Dear Thursday, right? We're Thursday today. Dear Thursday, I had such a great night, or maybe I didn't sleep that well. But here is what I would love our relationship to be today. And write as if you're writing to somebody, like you personify Thursday and you write of the relationship, how you want to show up, how you hope Thursday is going to show up. If you are not a morning person, but an evening person, you can do the inverse. You can write about what happened during your day. And again, when you write, as if you were writing to somebody, like a letter, dear, whatever, dear tree in my backyard, dear person who I saw on the train this morning, who I'll never talk to again, you know, like whatever it is that was poignant or touching during your day, write to that. And nobody has to see your writing. We're not going for the Pulitzer Prize. So it's just you. It's being present and seeing your own life from a little bit of a different creative perspective. And just, again, you just have 5-10 minutes is enough. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So that can be an easy first access to nourishing creativity.
Yeah, you don't want to make things more difficult for yourself, right? Who wants that? No, nobody.
Yeah, I feel like just like any sort of practice, many people definitely real and also sometimes have a mindset of like, I don't have time for one more thing.
Yeah.
But when we look at all of these practices that we talk about every month, and creativity is a practice, it's like these are the things that nourish our being and the way that we show up and the way that we, you know, move through our lives. So
it's very important.
Yeah, making even just these 5 minutes.
Yeah, because 5 or 10 minutes that you take for that, for yourself, for being present to your one and only life, is not going to change anything you have on your schedule during the day, right? 5 minutes, it's not. So I think the benefits that it gives really are far more valuable than being like, oh no, I don't have the time, and not doing it when you can actually squeeze or make room and spaciousness for 5 minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're at 101, so I don't want to keep us. I know time flies. I feel like when we talk about, I feel like the 5 minutes before this started, when we were just sitting in this room, it felt like forever.
That's right.
And then 30 minutes just
And that's it. Yeah.
right by. Thank you for your time and your creative brain and words for us today. And later this month, Francine will be leading a 30-minute workshop, and it is all about everyday creativity. So more ideas, and it will also be a little more practical. Like you'll do some things with her as well in that time to just play around and explore with what everyday creativity might look like for you, and how you can start to build that practice that we've alluded to and talked about. So join us later this month. We'll post that and post some reminders. And thank you all who are here live or who are watching on Facebook or watching after the fact. Thanks for your time and attention, and we will see you again soon. Until our paths cross again, please be well.
Bye. Thank you.